Record. Hey, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Extra Features Interviews. I have a fabulous guest whose new short film is available at the Philadelphia First Glance, if I remember correctly. Or are we in LA First Glance? I am right? Okay, I
LA.
can't remember. I do so many LA. I do so many of these, I forgot. Claudia Chakmati is here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And you're a producer on this film. I think this is the first time I've actually had somebody that didn't really have a lot to do in front of the camera. I guess you're more behind the scenes, but on a short film, how much of a role does a producer take?
It ultimately depends on who brings the material first, and honestly, how much the director or writer or creator of the material would like the producer to be involved. But in this case, I actually was very much involved from the get-go. I had met the director prior to her writing this short, and we sort of came up with the idea together. She had, a feature version of a script that was written, and we both sort of decided to do a short proof of concept, as you call it, and we kind of drafted, the best sort of scenes and beats and intimate moments from the feature version of the script into the short. And then together we casted the movie, we went location scouting together. So I was part of the whole thing from the get-go, from making sure that it gets from the page to the screen.
Okay, let's. So you were involved with this, from what I understand, before it's even created. So
Yes,
how
I
did you
was
know?
because of my relationship with the director. We have been friends. We were friends from home. We were both from Brazil, born and raised. And when I moved to LA, I knew that she lived here and that we both worked in the industry. And so I decided to hit her up and see if we could connect. And we connected, and it was a love fest. And, she was telling me about this idea that she had and wanting to actually make something and get it off the ground. And she asked me if I would be on board to produce it. And I agreed. Just from the get-go, because I knew her taste would be fabulous. And so we worked on it together.
So working on something together, how was that for? Is this your first film?
Our first, not our first short film. No, no, it's not. It's her first short as a writer director, but it hadn't been my first short film as a producer. I had done stuff before.
So how was working with a first timer then? Did you have to give her directions on things?
She was actually probably the best first timer that I've worked with, to be honest, and I've worked with a few first timers since. She just has amazing instincts. And I think, where she needs me is wherever I can reinforce that and tell her that her instincts are right. And so I was there to sort of be her sounding board. But other than that, she did her own research. She, didn't need me to hold her hand. It's always a little bit of a confidence play. You have to give them enough confidence to enable them and empower them to feel like they can make this. And that's what I was there for. And she just took it in stride. She was a great first timer.
Okay, so let's get into the film. Our opening shot, I found, is a very far away shot for a short. You're definitely 20 feet away, I would say at most. And then you kind of zoom in, and it looks like you're even using a filter, or maybe using the sun to give me a weird color. And I will honestly say, I wasn't really sure what you were trying to set up. Obviously, by the end of the film, I understand what the opening shot means. But what were you trying to establish there? Like, were you just making me think about it? Because I mean, you do draw on that concept again and again and again throughout the film, but in the opening shot, usually you're giving a presence, but there is no presence I found in this opening shot. It's more
Well,
makes you think.
we were using, throughout the film, we used anamorphic lenses, and we really wanted at the start of the film to make sure that this distance was felt with the characters, with, you know, the audience, in between the audience and the characters, but also both characters themselves. You know, they clearly have a very strained relationship, and we wanted to sort of call that into attention. But it is interesting that you mentioned that it's sort of it might call too much of your attention and maybe pulls you out of the movie. Which is quite frankly, I agree with you. It is a bold choice for a first shot of a movie. But we did want to sort of hit it in the head, at least at the start, because we only had so much time, you know, 15 minutes to tell the story. We wanted to really portray that distance and that sort of clinical coldness for the characters.
Now, you do have two notes on the fridge. One is a grocery list, and one is I love you, mom. I love you, you're a champ, mom, or something like that. I mean, I think that kind of gives away the film part of it. But I thought the shopping list was kind of funny because I really didn't see by the end of the film those two characters shopping. They did, obviously, throughout the film, but
Yeah, I mean, you do see the dad shopping, but you know, I think we had a lot of conversations going back and forth as to whether the note felt too on the nose. I think ultimately it's a decision whether, you know, do you trust your audience to get it and do you not trust your audience to get it? I think when we were showing it to a few people before, you know, it even went out and before we submitted it to festivals. Um, you know, we had asked them, did you understand that, spoiler alert for anyone hearing this, she's dead. Um, did you understand that that the mom was dead? And a few of them didn't, and that really worried us. We were concerned.
really,
So yeah, so that's why we kind of kept that decision to keep the note, because we were worried that people were not going to get it otherwise. Um, so there you
that's
go.
where I'm a stickler for details. Who wrote the notes?
That's it. Oh, our production designer did.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you these bizarre questions because I always want to know.
Love that. I'm gonna have to
Okay,
think back.
I do. I couldn't decide whether it was a house or an apartment. I decided on a house. Was I wrong?
Nope, it was a house.
The only way
It was a two-story house,
I thought
actually.
so because the way you shoot the fridge, the light coming through, it looked like a porch behind you. So it's the
Yes,
only thing I could think of. I'm like, it's got to be a house shot. So whose house was it?
it was if I remember correctly, the platform that we used was VRBO, I want to say, but it was a, you know, a random person's house in VRBO who rents the house for shooting, for filming purposes. So, you know, that's always helpful because you don't want to rent a location that doesn't really have an experience with film shoots. And she did quite a lot actually. And so it was in Glendale, in LA. We shot it in LA. And it was a quiet, honestly, it was a quite a perfect house for filming. It had a lot of space, setup space and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm going to get into a lot of my location idea. The artist studio, it's not the same house. I would argue, no, it's not.
It
Didn't
is.
look right. It
Really?
is.
Okay, it is. And it's actually, I'll give you one thing else. I'll give you a little secret. It's the same room that the husband and wife are in bed at. It's their
Did,
bedroom.
did
So
you
we
take the
cheated.
bed out?
We didn't need to because the room was so massive.
Okay.
It had so much negative space that we just kind of cheated with the 180.
And the grocery store?
That was a real grocery store in LA. It sort of serves like Latino um, snacks or whatnot in Culver City, actually, called El Camagüey. It has great stuff. And yeah, that was an overnight shoot. That was our last day.
And I do have a question about the swimming pool. Do you want me to get into the whole scene now? Or, oh, I guess we'll do it. Where's the swimming pool?
The swimming pool was a no, actually no, it was a private swimming pool center in Larchmont, I want to say. We looked at a lot of pools. The pool was actually the hardest location to find, and the one that made sense and that fit within the director's vision and had all of the accommodations that we needed. But it was one, I think, in Hollywood or Larchmont, I want to say.
Okay, I'm going to jump to the swimming pool scene because I just brought it up. Now, you start off the scene, you have a bunch of extras in it, I would say. Like you just shoot that opening scene and they all go. Now, are they part of a swimming club or did you hire these people or are you at a meet? I had all these questions while I was watching it.
So that scene was really funny the day that we shot it. That was, I think, I want to say our third or fourth day. It was a 5 day shoot. And I think we were, halfway almost towards the end of the shoot. And it was a full day at the pool. And we had, I think two of those swimmers were extras that we hired for the purposes of swim. They needed to be swimmers, they needed to know how to swim, and we hired them for that purpose. We hired three of them, but one of them didn't show up, so it was just two. And then the third one, to make up for it on the day, because they, didn't show up, wouldn't pick up their phone, whatnot, it happens. We got one of our PAs to sort of sub as
Yeah,
one of the swimmers. And he was a trooper, honestly, because he was not expecting that coming into work that day, but he did. And then the another swimmer who was in the shot was actually one of the instructors at the center, who was there. So we kind of borrowed him for that scene as well.
because I always want to know how many times did you have to shoot them jumping off the podium?
So many. At the end of the day, they were all red over here because they just couldn't jump anymore. I felt so bad for them, but we got it. But it was a tough day.
Now, you also switch when we switch the scene to the main actors there in the pool at this point. How low did you take those lights? Or again, are you color correcting at the end of the film? Like, I wasn't sure because it looks like you brought the lights down, but again, you're switching that filter on me again on the camera. And it looks like
Yeah,
you're adding color.
we did bring them down. We added color for the effect of the flashback purposes because we wanted to
Yes.
distinguish what was the flashback and what was present day. So that was the reasoning also behind the color correction as well.
So when you were color correcting, did you is this something you were after by producing the film, or the director was really playing with color and not subtly? Like you were definitely enforcing it on the viewer.
Yeah, I mean, are you asking as a producer how involved was I, or just
Bit
in
of
terms
both.
of decisions behind the color correction?
Both. That's perfect
Okay.
answer. Both.
I mean, as a producer, I obviously helped with the hiring, but when it came to, you know, what saturation and what brightness and what amount of contrast we would use on the present day timeline versus the past day time versus the past timeline. I would oversee and I would help the director, the sort of sounding board. Is this okay? Do you agree? Do you approve? But ultimately, the director was totally hands-on on that department, and her reasoning behind it was, wanting to have a softer hue for the past timeline, especially because the mom, Carol, is sort of the heart of the movie. She sort of represents, she gives off this warmth, and there's this softness to her. Even the actress has a bit of a softness to her. And so we really wanted to capture that with the past timeline. And for the present, we wanted it to be a bit colder, a bit more subdued, lots of greens, lots of blues. So that was the reasoning behind that.
I also
And
want
red
to
was also, sorry, just to add, red was always the color that would sort of break the palette. So I don't know if you can tell, but he had a red shirt that he would keep on, and we would always sort of keep it in the frame. So we would have, this warm color that would eventually break the tone a little bit.
were you really trying to make the dad character unlikable all the time? Like I never found a time I enjoyed his company or nor wanted it.
Did you not feel bad for him?
No, I think he made his own choices.
Huh. Interesting. We didn't plan to make an unlikable character. I think we were trying to show a broken character. And in the feature version, and I think, this really informs as well how the director and I see the characters compared to how someone who's just watching the short might see the characters, because we know the full arc that they're going on, and we know much more than what we see in the short. And so I was able to live with that character for much longer, and I know where it comes from. I know that he's trying. You can see that he's trying to do his best. He talks about doing that dinner for mom. You can see he's trying. You can see that he's going to the grocery store to buy those ingredients to make that dinner for mom, but he just ultimately can't do it. He's an alcoholic. He can't go
Yes.
through with.
I think you've definitely saying. I do want to discuss you shoot the car seat. They're driving at the beginning in a car. And I'm convinced it's on a flatbed. Like, I don't think it's moving. I did notice you trying to play with the background to get the thing. I'm like, no, they've definitely shot that twice. Oh, you're gonna have to help me out here. Did you shoot it twice? Or is it a flatbed? I was trying to figure it out.
We did shoot it twice, but it's not a flatbed. We shot it twice, not for the reason that you think we shot it twice. We shot it twice because the director didn't think that we had the shot the first day that we got it, but we actually ended up using the shot from the first day, so we didn't even count, the extra half day that we used. But it was a car process trailer that we used. We used a process trailer. We had cops closing the street, so it was an
Uh-huh.
actual real street. And we had them close for intermittent traffic for 2 minutes, and then we'd go around and then stop, let the cars pass, and then our cops would close again. We'd run it through. So that was a
So
that was a long day.
is it an edited shot or is it all one take in that shot?
It's all one take.
Okay. Because you're so tight on the car. And I was trying to figure out why the reason we're so tight. I mean, obviously you want
Well,
the closeness to get the conversation. I understood that part. But I was getting
right.
sidetracked by the back and I kept watching the car move. And I'm like, what am I missing here?
I mean, it did go pretty slow, right? I mean, obviously
Yes.
we went slow because acting and whatnot. So if you really pay attention, if you're a detailed viewer, which you definitely are, you would realize that they're moving at, I don't know, 5 miles an hour.
Well, that's why I was
But
confused, right? Because I kept seeing the back and it wasn't going fast enough. So I was wondering if you edited the scenery behind in after you shot it. I was trying to figure out, well, so that's why you're moving
no,
too
it
slow
was.
for me.
Yeah, it was all real. I was the one driving the car in front, with the director, with, the first AC, everyone inside the car. And we were guiding them as they shot it. And we kept tight, I think mostly because of, honestly, our permit constraints, because there's just so many different permits if you attach the camera outside the car versus inside the car. And so it was mostly a sort of a logistical question.
Okay, I did finally have that opening shot, and I want to move to when we first meet the dad in the bedroom. You definitely brighten up the film at that point, I think. I definitely think you do a normalized shot, I will say, with no filter on him. It was kind of
Yeah.
like a reality check for me. I'm like, oh, we're in a different world now. Was that the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be that jarring, but the room that we used for his bedroom had a lot of natural light. And if I remember correctly, we only blocked off a stretch of that. It was honestly it was like 3/4 walls of glass in that bedroom. So it just came off as a lot of natural light. I think honestly that's the biggest reason as to why it probably felt so bright to you. Um, but yeah, there was also no filter. Whereas the first shot had a filter on, this one did not have it. And so that might also be a reason for that.
Yeah, I want to go back to the artist studio. Who did the paintings?
So we have it was a mix, but most of the paintings came from a friend of ours in Santa Barbara who is an artist slash painter, and who we called and asked if she would be willing to donate for a short period of time some of her artwork for us, for the shoot. And so we went over, me and the director, we drove over to Santa Barbara and we went to her studio, and we picked and chose the ones that we feel like made sense or spoke to us, and we just kind of got curated this collection and brought it home with us.
I do have a question about the truck. I couldn't tell because I only really get one good shot of the truck. Is it an old truck or a new truck? I was thinking old, but I wasn't positive.
It's an old truck. It's a vintage. I think it's 90s, I want to say.
Okay, so where did that come from?
That was a very active and you know, uh, it was a very active and targeted decision from the director, because she really wanted, in her head, he was driving a red pickup truck, or a maroon pickup truck, whatever that was. But that was, the idea that she had in her head, and it's what she wanted. Again, it's the red. I think red signifies a little bit of, it's his color. It breaks a little bit with the blue and the green hues that we have with the movie. Um, so we kind of went on a witch hunt after, a red pickup car that would fit within our budget. There were some yellow ones, some green ones, that we were flirting with, but ultimately the director shot them down and she said I needed to be red and I wanted to be vintage because I feel like it's muscular. I feel like it speaks to the character. He's old and stubborn and he's stuck in his ways, and that was the decision behind it. And quite frankly, I think it was the shot of the supermarket when the car is parked outside. I think it's a beautiful shot.
It is. Okay, last thing, I want to go over music. Use the same song, I think, 2 or 3 times. And then you abruptly change to something totally different for the last two musical cues. Why is that?
So that song, Shining Star, I think we played it twice. But I don't know, correct me if
Maybe
I'm wrong.
three.
We played
Okay,
it
two
once.
for sure.
Yeah. We played it once in the car, in the radio. And then the other time in the supermarket, sort of, yeah, the supermarket microphone or whatever it is. And yeah, and the idea behind it is that Shining Star was their song, his and his wife's. And that's why when he listens to it in the car, it sparks his memory, the flashback of when they're in bed together, one of their last conversations. And we just thought it was sort of a fun callback to have it in the supermarket playing, behind it. It was a decision. We went back and forth on this because we did ask ourselves, how realistic would that be, first of all? And B, is that too on the nose? Like, are we just hitting people over the head with it? But ultimately we thought it was fun, and we decided to, throw reason off the window and just kind of keep that song. It's such a beautiful song, and we felt like, it was a smart use of it, the second time around. And as for the other, musical score, that was actually an original score composition. We hired a composer to come in and compose all of that. That was a process. It took us a while to get it right. Um, I think at first we were looking for something more orchestral, very string oriented, and then we realized that the more minimalistic, the better. And we liked the way that the piano sounded, the synthesizers, a little bit of the violin, but overall something much more subdued. I think, you know, a small thing does wonders for a movie. A small sort of soundtrack does wonders for emotion. And that was, you know, our reasoning behind it. And we had a lot of references to pull from.
Okay, I'm going to move on to fun questions. I think I've covered everything in the film. I think I did pretty good. I
You did
if
great. You had
if
me
I
thinking.
missed something, feel free to point it out to me, but I don't think I did. I kind of left the plot out for you.
No,
Oh,
yeah, I loved it.
you're first time on the show, so I need your favorite film.
Just one? That's impossible.
You can give me five. I'm not fussy.
Okay. Requiem for a Dream, Her, Lost in Translation, 7 Days in Heaven, and oh God. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Ah, most recent movie I watched that I loved, Poor Things. There you
You know what? It's funny watching your film. Those all make sense to me.
go. Really?
Yeah, I can see bits of things, especially
That's
Rec Room.
flattering to me.
I definitely see Rec Room in your film, no doubt about it.
I love that.
Well, you've already answered the last question. A favorite film of 2023 would be Poor Things, I guess, since you just said it.
Okay, I have another. I had a few actually.
Okay.
The Zone of Interest.
The only one I have yet to see, but it's on my list for this week. If I wasn't doing this, I
Oh,
probably would be watching Zone of Interest. So it's coming. Hopefully by
well,
Friday I'll be
I'm
done.
sorry about that. You should watch it.
It's the last one. I've seen all the other ones. One film you always recommend to people.
Oof. Um, one film I always recommend to people.
Oh, everybody
Good
has one.
Time.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. I've seen it. And then this is my last question. I haven't asked in a long time. Your favorite movie snack?
My favorite movie, what? Sorry.
Snack? What do you bring to the movies to eat?
Popcorn, always.
Okay, thank you for your time. Tell everybody where they can find your movie and anything else you would like them to find.
You can find our movie at First Glance Film Festival in LA. Otherwise, we are still seeking for distribution. And you can follow me on Instagram at CACAUCHAKMATI. Cacao Chakmati. That's me.
Thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you so much.